And we're back with our guest. It is Keldon Bester. He is the executive director of the Canadian Anti-Monopoly Project. Okay, Keldon, I promised you we'd talk about big tech, and let's get to it. You said that big tech is a bigger threat to Canadian sovereignty than the Trump tariffs. So can you walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, the issue here is having to revisit some of the assumptions that we had about our relationship with the US and these companies' relationship with their government. So now that we are on more unstable footing with the US, and that these companies, at least some of them, seem to be getting closer and closer to the US administration that has been, quite hostile to Canada, we need to take a look and see where are we really dependent on these companies. And unfortunately, the answer is, for how we connect with one another, how we access information online, and how we conduct a lot of commerce, whether as businesses or even operating as governments, there is typically one to two American firms, Google, Meta, Amazon, Microsoft, who make up the lion's share of these markets. And so, what we want to raise without being alarmist is, the likelihood that these companies could become a part of the US's foreign policy that as of late has been quite hostile to Canada. And whether that risk materializes, we need to be aware of it.
So okay, there's one thing about being aware of it, but the other aspect of it is what do we do about it? So what are you suggesting there?
Exactly. And that's the hard work to be done. Fundamentally, it's about diversifying. And,
Right.
this doesn't necessarily mean building a Canadian Microsoft or, Canadian cloud computing, but it's looking around the world and seeing where do we have like minded allies? Where can we be part of a sort of global effort to diversify away so that we are less dependent and more resilient, whatever the foreign policy or goals of the US government. So we really do need to do the hard work to diversify these markets and embrace this sort of anti monopoly approach that we've been able to ignore for decades.
Um, People really do have a love-hate relationship with big tech, of course. We like to complain about it, but we still keep using it. So I guess that's my question. Like, is there a solution given our connectedness to these behemoth companies already? I mean, that's the big issue, I guess.
Is there a solution? I don't think there is a solution. Are there a number of steps we can take? I think there are. And they range from, again, that diversity of providers I'm talking about there, all the way to requirements for, domestic storage of data, secure storage of data, and regulation to ensure that, customers and governments dependent on cloud computing services are not indiscriminately cut off or discriminated against by the major big tech players. So it's going to take a range of solutions, but if it doesn't have at its heart the idea that we need to have options in this space, I think we're going to set ourselves up for issues down the road.
You mentioned secure storage of data. Why is that so important?
Well, again, we transact a phenomenal amount of highly personal and often confidential data with these companies, and the US, through a number of pieces of legislation, I'm thinking of the Cloud Act in particular,
Mhm.
has taken a, let's call it, expansive view over what information it should be able to glean from these companies. And so if we are using these services, there's critical data there that Canadians need not only need to have access to, but need to be secure in the idea that these can't be used against them by a foreign government.
And is that does that require a kind of a positive action by the Canadian government to protect that?
Yeah, on two fronts, well, on least two fronts. One is the requirement that data centers are actually located in Canada and that traffic, internet traffic, service traffic stays within Canada. And on the second, it requires, investment in actually having those data centers, whether private or public, likely a mix of both. So there's things on two fronts, both on the legislative side and on the actual investment side that Canada will need to do to ensure that kind of security.
And those data centers, they're not inexpensive. They're billions of dollars projects, right?
Yeah, we're seeing a big rush of investment across North America and across the world in these data centers. So I think there's actually on the investment side a lot of piggybacking we can do, so long as we have those requirements that we know data within Canada is actually
Right.
secure.